There is a magnet inside the seal of your fridge door. You have probably never thought about it. You reach for the handle, pull it open, and when you close it, there is that small, satisfying tug as the door pulls itself shut. Something you have done thousands of times without once wondering where it came from. There is also a magnet inside your earbuds, making it possible for a speaker the size of a lentil to fill your head with sound. One inside every electric motor in your home. One inside the phone you are reading this on. None of these magnets look like much, but the process that creates them stretches from an open-pit mine to a factory where metal is melted without oxygen and struck by an electric pulse lasting thousandths of a second. How does something that quiet end up doing so much? Let's get into it right here on Small Things. The difference between a magnet and a rock. A piece of iron and a magnet are made of almost exactly the same thing. Same atoms and structure. What separates them is invisible. Inside every magnetic material, the atoms are grouped into tiny regions called domains. Each domain has a direction it points. In ordinary iron, those domains point randomly, canceling each other out. In a magnet, those domains all point the same way. The combined effect of billions of aligned domains produces the field you feel. That is the only difference between a magnet and a piece of iron. A magnet is ordinary material in an unusually orderly state. The question of how to make one is entirely a question of how to impose that order and make it hold. 3 ingredients that changed everything. It did not begin with a plan to reinvent modern technology. It began with a competition between 2 teams of scientists who did not know about each other, working on opposite sides of the Pacific in the early 1980s. A research team in Japan, led by a physicist named Masato Sagawa, and a team at General Motors in the United States were independently chasing the same problem: how to make a permanent magnet stronger than anything that existed. The magnets available at the time were already useful. Alnico magnets, made from aluminium, nickel, and cobalt, had been around since the 1930s and powered the speakers in living room stereos across the world. Ferrite magnets, cheaper and simpler, were everywhere by the 1970s, inside toy motors, cassette players, and refrigerator doors. They worked, but they were reaching the limit of what their chemistry would allow. Sagawa and the General Motors team arrived at nearly the same answer within months of each other. The answer was 3 ingredients: neodymium, iron, and a small amount of boron. Neodymium belongs to the rare earth family, 17 elements scattered across the planet but hiding inside rock, mixed with all 16 of their chemical cousins. Getting a clean sample of just one of them requires chemistry that is patient, repetitive, and expensive. The name rare earths is misleading because the elements are not scarce in the ground. They are simply very difficult to pull out cleanly, which makes them function as though they were rare at every stage of industrial production. Mines are not the bottleneck. Separation is. When those 3 ingredients were combined correctly, the result produced a magnetic field roughly 10 times stronger than anything ferrite magnets could achieve. A piece the size of a coin could hold a small toolbox off the floor. 2 pieces colliding could shatter like ceramic. Neither team had been trying to revolutionize consumer electronics. They were trying to solve a magnetic engineering problem. And what they found happened to change the size and weight of nearly every device humans built in the following 4 decades. Within a decade, devices started shrinking visibly. The motor that once needed a fist-sized magnet now worked with something half as large. The cordless drill, the compact hard drive, the small hearing aid, the earbud, all of them owe their present size and weight to what two research teams found while racing each other to a finish line neither knew the other was approaching. Fire, acid, and a block that cannot stick to anything. The journey from rock to magnet begins at an open-pit mine, often in the Mojave Desert in California or in China, which refines the vast majority of the world's rare earth metals. Explosive charges crack the hillside open. Haul trucks carry the broken rock to a processing plant where it is crushed to powder and poured into baths of sulfuric acid. The acid dissolves the rare earth metals out of the stone into a dark liquid in which all 17 rare earth elements float together, chemically almost identical. A method called solvent extraction moves the mixture through dozens of tanks in sequence, each pulling a slightly different element free, until after many passes, a clean batch of neodymium has been separated from its 16 cousins. That neodymium arrives at a magnet factory in sealed steel drums. This is where the process becomes precise in a way that most industrial manufacturing is not, because neodymium is an unusually demanding material to work with. Neodymium cannot be melted in open air because it reacts immediately and aggressively with oxygen and moisture. The metal is loaded into a vacuum furnace. The air is removed, and the temperature climbs past 1,300 degrees Celsius. Neodymium, iron, and boron melt into a glowing orange liquid. The proportions are strict, roughly 30% neodymium, 1% boron, the rest iron. 3 ingredients. Somewhere in those proportions, the chemistry that makes a strong magnet possible is either present or it is not. When ready, the liquid is poured into molds packed from sand mixed with a quick hardening binder. The binders catch fire on contact with the molten metal. Flames rise from the factory floor while the metal sets inside. Workers in protective gear stand back and let everything burn out and cool, sometimes overnight, before the mold can safely be cracked open. What falls out is a dark gray block. Heavy, correct shape, correct chemistry, no different in appearance from a block of industrial scrap you might find on any factory floor, and completely, entirely non-magnetic. It is not magnetic until the last moment. This is the part that surprises almost everyone. The block that comes out of the mold cannot attract a paperclip. It cannot stick to a fridge. Set it down on a pile of iron filings and nothing moves. After all that extraction, chemistry, and heat, the metal sits on the workbench like any gray lump of industrial material. The reason goes back to domains. The neodymium iron-boron block has exactly the right atomic structure to hold a powerful magnetic alignment, but the domains inside it are still pointing in random directions. The raw material for an extraordinary magnet is present. The order has not been imposed. 2 things bring it to life. First, the block goes into a furnace at around 900 degrees Celsius for several hours. This annealing process lets the internal structure settle into the configuration that will hold alignment once one is given. Then the block is coated with a thin layer of nickel because neodymium oxidizes quickly without protection. Then comes the moment. The block is placed inside a coil of thick copper wire. A bank of capacitors releases a pulse of electricity through that coil, generating a magnetic field several Tesla in strength. The field of the entire Earth is roughly 30,000 times weaker. The pulse lasts only a few thousandths of a second, but in that fraction of a moment, every domain inside the block snaps into the same direction, and the alignment holds when the pulse ends. The block that could not attract a paperclip now requires real force to pull from a steel surface. Why small got so powerful. Today, you will find the practical consequence of that process in two places that feel completely unrelated until you understand what they share. Inside your earbuds is a speaker driver smaller than a shirt button. The reason that button-sized driver can reproduce the full range of a piece of music is the magnet inside it, which generates a field strong enough to move a tiny membrane back and forth thousands of times per second with precise control. A ferrite magnet of the same size would produce a fraction of the field strength, which would mean a fraction of the sound quality or a much larger and heavier driver to compensate. The earbuds that fit invisibly into your ear exist at that size because the magnet inside them punches far above its weight. The electric vehicle motor tells a similar story from a different angle. An EV motor does not use a gearbox. It produces torque directly and immediately across a wide range of speeds, which is why electric cars can accelerate from a standstill in a way that surprises people who expect the lag of an internal combustion engine. That direct torque delivery is only possible because the magnets inside the motor are strong enough to generate the electromagnetic forces required across the whole operating range. Without neodymium magnets, EVs would need significantly larger and heavier motors to achieve the same performance, which would reduce range, add cost, and defeat much of what makes the design compelling. The pull in the door. So how does a tiny magnet become powerful enough to help run modern technology? Think about that fridge door again, that small, satisfying tug when it closes. A magnet may look like the simplest object in the room, but behind that quiet pull is a long journey of rock, chemistry, heat, electricity, and human engineering. Rock drilled from a hillside, acid separating one metal from 16 cousins, a vacuum furnace where oxygen is banned, a mold that catches fire while the metal sets, a gray block that cannot attract anything, and then one pulse of electricity, lasting less than a second, that aligns every atom in the same direction permanently. The magnet in your fridge door will probably outlast the fridge. It will likely outlast the house. It has no moving parts and nothing to maintain. It just holds. If this changed the way you think about the next time you feel that small tug from a fridge door or hear sound from an earbud, let us know in the comments what you want us to explore next. We might make it our next episode. Thanks for watching. History often hides in the smallest details.